Help me. Help me. Hallelujah.
Oh, thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Jesus.
Oh, my Lord.
Thank you, Lord.
Y'all trying to make me hurt myself. Oh, man. Woo. We could stand a little bit of that every Sunday. What an awesome worship and praise we have had this morning. Oh, my Lord. I'll be thinking about this all week long. This being Missionary Sunday, and I thought about something, and I don't know, maybe some of you might have remembered this, but last Sunday as I was sitting here, and the Lord deals with me in kind of strange ways, and when he speaks to me, he has a sense of humor. And if you look at my sermon topic, you might have picked up where the Lord took me. He gave me this message by bringing to my remembrance a TV show. My topic this morning, your mission, should you decide to accept. Somebody already knows where this came from.
Amen.
I want to look at the mission Christ gave to believers. Because when he came down from the cross and rose from the grave, he left a great commission. He gave us marching orders. And I want to look at the mission Christ gave to all believers, not just to preachers, not just to deacons, not just to missionaries, because we're all supposed to be missionaries. Not just to the ushers or trustees or any other ministry in the church, but he gave this mission to all believers. Now, there are some challenges to the mission of Christ, and I want to look a little bit at some of those. But I want to leave you with this question: who is willing to accept the challenge? Now, pray with me just a little while. Now, you remember the show Mission Impossible. You had to see the beginning of the show to know the mission. And I remember if I was away and wanted to be home to catch the show, I wanted to make sure I caught the first 5 minutes of the show. Because if you missed the first 5 minutes of the show, you did not know what the mission was.
That's right.
It was important to see that person go into an amusement park and go into some cubby hole of some kind, pull out a drawer, and there would be this reel-to-reel tape recorder. Now, I know some of these kids don't have a clue what a tape recorder is. It is the equivalent of a DVD. And it would begin to play, "Good morning, Mr. So-and-so," or "Miss So-and-so." And it would begin to explain the scenario of what these spies were supposed to do. And there would be an envelope with pictures of who this person was and who that person was, as the person would begin to talk, and you would begin to get the history of what was supposed to happen and all of the history of what these people had done. And then at the end, there would be the phrase, "Your mission, should you decide to accept." After the briefing, you would get that phrase. And then the one thing that I liked was, before they had shredders, it said, "This tape will self-destruct in so many seconds." And then you'd sit there and you'd wait to see the smoke and to hear the psh. And then you knew the show was going to start after the commercials. The other part of it, he said that should you be discovered, the office would disavow any knowledge of your assignment. Y'all remember that? Yes. Now, y'all kids, the only way you'll see that, you got to go to, I think, TV Land or something like that to see it on reruns. But that's the only way you'll have a clue of what I'm talking about today, because you'd have to see that to understand. But as I look at that and I thought about that, and the Lord began to speak to me to show me that, and he said, you know, this has to do with Missionary Sunday. And he began to unfold this for me and give me the text that we've read this morning from Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20, and Mark chapter 16, verse 15 and 16. And I began to meditate on those things, and as I look at the text, and I began to think about the mission of the church, and I began to think about what we as Christians are supposed to do. Each of us is supposed to, as you've heard me say before, we are to tell our story. How are we to tell our story? We're to tell our story through our verbal testimony. We are to tell our story through the lives that we live. We are to tell our story through the songs that we sing. Every song that's in these hymn books is somebody's testimony that they put to words. Amen. And the songs that you sing now, the contemporary songs now that you sing, that's somebody's testimony of something that God gave them about how they feel about the Lord. Every one of those songs that was sung this morning was somebody's testimony about something God gave to them about how they feel about their relationship with the Lord. They are telling their story, but they're telling it to melody. Yes. Each of us, whether we can carry a tune or not, whether we can sing solo or sing so low that nobody can hear us, we are to tell our story. Yeah. Yes. So, when we tell our story, we have to understand there's a couple of things that as we look at the text, that we need to keep in mind when we are sharing our story. When we look at Matthew chapter 18, Jesus came and spake, he says, and all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Now, if I can stop right there, the first thing I want to tell you is that you need to remember that the authority belongs to Jesus. You can't go out under your own authority. Now remember in the book of Acts, I believe it is, and there were some folks that had seen Christians do some things as far as casting out devils, and they decided they were going to try it themselves, and they said, I adjure you by Jesus whom Paul preached. And the demon looked up and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? And began to tear them every which way but loose. If you're not going out in Jesus' authority, if you don't know Jesus, you can't act on his authority. You cannot act on your own. When you go in his name and not your name. It's just like most jobs now require you to have some type of ID that says you work in that place. Some even have things on the ID that allows you to hold it up to a key fob, so when you get to the building, it just makes you feel so important. You walk up to the building and you hold up your little card and the door goes click and you can walk in. Oh, I tell you, the first time I got one of those and I said, oh, stop. I'm somebody now. I can make this gate open up. I can make this door unlock. I'm somebody. And I used to see people do that and wonder what kind of job they got. And the first time I did that, and I went in and to the place, and people would look at me, wow, he could do that. And what they didn't realize, I was a volunteer. But it makes you feel so important that you can do that. You see, because everything now, you have to have something that identifies you as the person who has the authority to go in. And when you got that key fob, it says you are representing not yourself, but you are representing who you work for. And you see, when we come to Christ, we have a key fob. But the key fob that we have is all over us. We can't see it, but the world can recognize it, because the devil can recognize it, because it is the Spirit of the living God. And when we go anywhere, we go under the Spirit and the authority of Jesus Christ. When you go not in your name, you go in his name.
That's right. That's right.
You can't go for him unless you personally know him. And it's more than just coming and warming a pew or giving some lip service or knowing a couple of scriptures. You have to know him in the depths of your heart. You have to have some kind of ongoing personal relationship with Jesus Christ in order to go on this mission. The other thing you got to understand is that he's not going to force you to go. You must say yes. Now remember that mission, and I used to think about that on Mission Impossible. The person would say, your mission should you decide to accept. One had to make a choice. And you see, when we come to Christ, we make a choice to be chosen. When we come to Christ, we make a choice to be chosen. When we decide to go out and share our faith, we make a choice to go on the mission to tell somebody about Jesus. We make a choice to tell somebody that it is no secret what God can do. We make a choice to tell somebody that God is a healer. We make a choice to let somebody know that God raised us from a sick bed, or God brought us out of depression, or God brought us from the depths of despair, or God delivered us from some kind of addiction, or God brought us from a place where we thought we'd never pull ourselves out of. It wasn't us that did it, but it was God. We make a choice to tell our story. He will not force you. You must decide to say yes. Now remember, at the end of the tape, it said, your mission, should you decide to accept. Well, even in Christ, your mission, should you decide to accept, it will not be easy.
My God.
Jesus said, this is not going to be an easy task. You see, he told the first disciples that he chose, and that is the model for what he's telling us. He said, follow me. He told somebody else, he said, if you come after me, you must deny yourself and take up your cross daily and follow me. It's not going to be easy. Sometimes it's not going to be popular. Sometimes you will be tried and you will be tested. Sometimes you're going to go through hard trial and tribulation. Sometimes you must tell your story in the midst of your sickness. Sometimes you must tell your story in the midst of how bad you feel in your body. But somebody's looking at you that feels worse off than you. Somebody will look at you and see how you handle your situation and your trouble and your trials and your situation, and see how God brings you out. And they will decide that if that same God could bring you through, they will want to try that same God for themselves. Sometimes the testimony they hear will not be the one from your lips, but will be the one that they see in your life. Sometimes it will be the testimony of how broken you were, but how you stood the test and held the faith in the midst of your trial, in the midst of your obstacles, in the midst of your test, in the midst of being talked about, in the midst of being abused and misused. They will want to see how you weather the storms of your life. You might sometimes feel alone, but I'm here to tell you, you might feel alone, but you're not alone. He said, I will never leave you, nor will I forsake you. Jesus said, I am with you always, even till the end of the world. Your mission, should you decide to accept, is one to carry your story everywhere you go, anywhere you can share it. Tell somebody what the Lord has done for you. And I want to tell you this. You might feel like you might be discovered. In case you are discovered in Mission Impossible, if you were discovered, the head office would disavow any knowledge of your assignment. But let me tell you about the head office up in heaven. If you are discovered, I'm almost finished. Just give me a few more minutes. I got to bring this home and paint the picture for you as I see it in my mind's eye. If you are discovered, he will not turn his back on you, because remember I told you, he said, I will not leave you, nor will I forsake you. But what he will do, he's told the scribe, write your name, write your name, write your name in the Lamb's book of life. He will shout it out from all eternity, and one day he will point to you and say, well done, well done, well done, thy good and faithful servant. Your mission is accomplished. You fought the good fight. You finished your course. You've kept the faith. Now come on home. Enter in to the place I prepared for you, and not just for you only, but all those who hope for my appearing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your mission, your mission, your mission, should you decide to accept, is to follow him. Follow him. Tell your story till the day he calls you home.
My God. Thank you, Pastor.
Now, if you don't believe it,
Thank you.
then don't play with him now. No.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
If you don't think you've got a story, and some folks might be measuring against somebody else. Well, I'm not so-and-so. I'm not Reverend Fardrell, or I'm not Dr. Taylor, or I'm not Reverend Jackson or Reverend Berry, or I'm not Deacon Young or Deacon Smith or this one or that one. No, but you.
That's right. Jesus. I know that's right.
You might be a Sister Clinton, or you might be a Sister Hosby, or you might be a brother Brother Taylor in the back, or Brother Ford, or you might be somebody else, or you might be a Brother Danny, and you might be able to tell yours with a little joke to it. Brother Danny was saying, who's facing surgery this week, and he was standing there with a smile. He said, Reverend, I went and sharpened my knives today, just in case the surgeon's knife wasn't sharp enough. And the Lord whispered in my ear, just laugh at him. He's just telling his story. And he's telling it with a smile. And you know what? Everything's gonna be all right. Yeah. You might be a brother and sister Gibson. You tell your story the way God gives you your story.
That's right. That's right.
Because I can't tell your story. Only you can. And there's somebody that will resonate to your story that can't resonate to mine.
That's right. That's right.
And your story, I don't care if you're as young as that baby in the back, or as old as the oldest person here this morning. If you've got a story, just tell it. Somebody will need to hear it, and somebody will do just like that woman at the well. Oh Lord, I'm feeling the waterworks starting here now. You're going to cause somebody to leave their water pot where it is and go tell a whole town, come meet the man. Because you went on the mission and you accepted. So should you decide to accept, The Lord is here this morning. As I extend the invitation, is there one? Because he's saying, it's now afternoon. Good afternoon. And he's calling you by name. And let me give you the briefing. He said, I went to Calvary a long time ago, and I suffered, bled, and died for you. There were people along the way that spit in my face, whipped me with 39 stripes, nailed me to a cross. Every time I think about it, I can see it. And I could have come down from that cross, but I was on a mission. I told the Father I'd accept it. And I looked up in heaven, and my Father turned his back on me because I represented the stench and the sin of a whole world. And he didn't turn around again until I was covered with his own blood. And I looked up at him, and he looked down at me, and the picture that I'm getting is when he looked down and saw Jesus covered with his own blood. And he smiled at his son, and Jesus said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. My mission is done. And Jesus gave up the ghost. Satan thought he killed it. But Jesus had one post-mission to do. He went down into hell and snatched the keys out of Satan's hand and paraded him in front of all his little imps to show who had authority over him. And then came out of the grave and made that statement. I've got the keys now. All power in heaven and earth is given unto me. Now, he's calling you by name still. Your mission, should you decide to accept, is to come unto him, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and he'll give you rest. And then you can tell your story of how he met you this day and kept his promise that he'd walk with you the rest of your life and through all eternity. Won't you stand?
I go. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you. Hallelujah.